So let's get into this. I want to talk about something that happens way too often when it comes to dating. The idea that just because a guy takes you out on a few dates, now you owe him something, specifically your body. I want to make it clear from the jump. You don't owe him anything. Nothing. This is something that a lot of women struggle with, especially younger women. You go out with a guy a few times, he spends some money on you, maybe you had a good time, and suddenly you start feeling like this weird pressure. You feel like because he put in effort or because he's been nice, you somehow have to pay him back physically. And let me just stop you right there. You don't. Your body is not a paycheck. Dating should not be transactional. So let's break this down. Some men are going to argue, well, I spent all this money on her. I took her out to all these nice places. I invested my time, so I deserve something in return. But that's where things get toxic. In business or real estate, sure. You invest in something with the expectation of getting a return. You put money into a property, you fix it up, make it look real nice, and you hope to make a profit. That's ROI, return on investment. But dating is not business. You're not an asset. You're not property. And you definitely don't owe anyone a return just because they spent a few dollars on you. Now, I want to take this a bit deeper because I've been in a situation where this became very, very clear to me. I was dating this guy for a year, and at first, everything seemed like it was moving in the right direction. And he made me believe we were building towards something real and something serious. But as time went on, I started seeing the red flags. He was just breadcrumbing me. He kept giving me just enough attention to keep me around, but never really committing. It was like I was in what's called a holding pattern. So a holding pattern is when a guy makes it seem like that things are progressing, but then he might, he'll make some plans, some dates in advance or talk about the future, but nothing ever really happens. The plans fall through, the dates get canceled, and suddenly you realize he's just keeping you around as an option. Meanwhile, you're investing your time, your energy, and you start feeling like maybe you need to give more to keep him interested. So you'll think, maybe if I do more, he'll finally commit. But trust me, you don't owe him anything. I had to learn this the hard way. I stayed in that holding pattern for way too long, and I'm thinking I had to give more of myself to prove my worth when really he was just using me to keep his options open. He wasn't investing in me. He was just trying to keep me on standby. Now, here's where I really want you to pay attention. The whole idea of the ROI in dating is complete nonsense. If a guy chooses to spend his money on dates, that's his choice. It doesn't mean he's owed anything in return. If he's treating dating like a business transaction, that's a red flag, and you need to recognize that early on. And let's be real, there are always going to be people who criticize. You know those type. Oh, I see why she's still single, or oh, she's just too difficult. She's too high maintenance. But here's the thing. So what? Be single. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who's only using you. There are plenty of women who will give a man exactly what he wants, how he wants it, where he wants it, and when he wants it. But you don't have to be one of them. You can be the exception to the rule. You can set your standards, and if it means you're single for a while, then so be it. At least you're in control of your own life. Now, let's talk about something else that needs to be said. The reality is there are women who are out here who will give themselves up easily after a date or two. And I'm not here to shame anyone, but I have to be honest. It makes things harder for women who don't operate that way. When you're a woman with boundaries, society labels you as high maintenance or difficult because men are used to women who make it easy. And when you don't fall into that category, they think you're too much work. But here's the truth. You're not high maintenance. You just have standards. And there's nothing wrong with that. If a man thinks you're too much work because you have boundaries, that says more about him than it does about you. He's the one who's low effort, not you being too difficult. And to those women who make it easy, I hope you're listening, and I hope you start to make it harder. Value yourself more, because when you lower your standards for someone who isn't worth it, you're not just hurting yourself, you're making it harder for all of us who are trying to do better. Now, here's where the conversation tends to shift. So some guys will say, well, if that's the case, why don't we just stop paying for everything? Why don't we just stop providing? Y'all can handle it yourselves now, right? And they think that's the mic drop moment. But here's the thing. Nobody is saying you shouldn't want to provide or be generous. It's just that providing doesn't automatically mean you're owed something in return. Yes, Women can take care of themselves now. We can pay for our own meals. We can handle our own bills and we can make our own way. But if you're the type of man who still wants to provide, who still wants to take care of the woman you're with, that's great. That's a part of being a protector, a partner. But you should be doing that because you want to, not because you think it buys you access to something. Providing for someone should come from a place of wanting to invest in the relationship, not expecting something in return. And let's be real. If you want to stop paying because you think that means you're losing out on some deal, go ahead. There are plenty of women who can handle things on their own. But here's what you need to understand. Relationships aren't about keeping score. It's not about, I did this, so now you owe me that. It's about mutual respect, about building something together and supporting each other. It's not about transactional expectations. A lot of men fall back on that men have always been the providers argument, but the truth is, women don't need you to provide. We need you to show up. We need you to be present emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And if all you're bringing to the table is what's in your wallet, then it's time to reevaluate what you're offering. And you know what? The men who really understand this, they're not out here counting pennies or feeling like they take a loss if things don't work out. A man with the right mindset looks at it like this. Okay, so I took her out on a few dates. I spent some money. We didn't end up together and we didn't have sex. But that's not a loss because it's not transactional for him in the first place. He knows he's going to make that money back and more. It's just about the experience. Dating is about meeting people and figuring out if there's a connection. And if there isn't, you're moving on. For a man with the right mindset, it's about the journey, not about what he didn't get in return. That's the type of mindset you want a man to have. A man who knows that dating isn't about getting a return on his investment, but about seeing if there's a real connection. And when it doesn't work out, he's not bitter. He moves on to the next, knowing his effort and his energy will come back to him in other ways. That's the difference between men who genuinely get it and the ones who just want to play games. And here's the thing about the truly traditional men. So they're the ones who say, I'm the provider, I take care of my woman, I protect her, and I profess my love for her. And honestly, that's great. Nothing wrong with being traditional in that sense. In fact, those men who live by that mindset are usually the ones who understand. They know that providing for someone who isn't expecting something in return, it's about giving because that's who you are. What's unfortunate is that we even have to call that traditional now. That used to just be the way men acted when they truly valued the woman they were with. But these days, there are too many men who slap the traditional label on themselves and then act like paying for dinner means they've earned something. Real traditional men, they're secure in themselves. They provide, they protect, and they don't expect something in return. They do it because they value you. So here's the takeaway. You don't owe anyone anything. Dating isn't a transaction. Your time, your energy, your body, none of that is up for trade just because someone took you out on a few dates. And if a man doesn't understand that, then he's not the one for you. Let him move on to someone else and stay true to your standards. Don't ever feel pressured to lower your boundaries or compromise your values just to keep someone around. The right man will respect you, value you, and never make you feel like you owe him for anything. And if that means you're single for a while, then so be it. Be single. When you're single, you're in control of your own life, and that's way better than being with someone who just sees you as an investment that they need to get a guaranteed return on. Now, let's get into this analogy about return on investment because this is where a lot of guys get it twisted. In business or real estate, when you invest in something, let's say you buy a property and you're expecting a return based on the value you put into it. You spend money, you make improvements, and eventually you want to sell it for more than what you paid for it. That's ROI, return on investment. But here's the thing, dating is not real estate. You're not a house, you're not property, and there is no return that a man is owed because he spent time or money on you. If a guy is looking at dating like it's some kind of investment he's supposed to get a return on, that's a huge red flag. And honestly, it's a toxic mindset. In real estate, if you make a bad investment, you lose money, that's on you. In the same way, if a guy chooses to invest his time and money into dating, he's doing that because he wants to, not because he's entitled to anything from you in return. A man with the right mindset will see dating as an experience, not a transaction. He'll understand that sometimes things just don't work out, and that's okay. He's not out here keeping track of what he spent on you and expecting something in return. So whether that's sex or a relationship, he knows that if things didn't work out, that's just a part of the process. And he's going to make that money back anyway. It's not a loss to him because he's not thinking of it as a business deal. He's thinking of you as a person he wanted to get to know. That's the kind of man you need to be looking for. Better yet, attracting. A man who's secure enough to know that just because he spent money on dates doesn't mean he's entitled to anything from you. He's not sitting there bitter and bougie because things didn't go his way. He understands that dating is about seeing if there's a connection. And if there's not, on to the next one. He'll make that money back and then some. And he'll move forward without feeling like you owe him anything. That's why this whole idea of return on investment doesn't belong in dating. Dating is about mutual respect, shared experiences, and seeing if you vibe with someone. It's not about one person putting in and expecting the other to pay them back. You're not an investment, and you don't owe anyone for your time, effort, or the money they put in. It's really that simple. So here's the takeaway. You don't owe anyone anything. Your time, your energy, your body, they're not for sale, and they're not up for trade just because someone took you out on a few dates. If a man doesn't understand that, then he's not the one for you. Let him move on to someone else who's willing to play that game. You keep your standards high and your peace intact. You're not high maintenance. You just know your worth. And that's exactly how it should be. I really hope this video was helpful, and I really hope it touched any of you ladies, especially the younger ladies in your 20s, mid-20s, even younger than that nowadays. And even for us grown ones, we kind of forget sometimes you don't owe anyone your body just because they spent time with you. Get rid of that guilt, get rid of that pressure that some guys will put on you. Not all guys are like this, thank God, but unfortunately you're going to run into more guys like this than you will those rare ones who will actually show you the opposite of how things really should be without you feeling like a piece of property. Thank y'all so much for watching. Leave your comments below if you have experienced this, or maybe you're going through this right now. I hope this helped you and you heard something that you can pull from that can really help you in your journey of dating, because it is a wild ride sometimes. So I'll see y'all in the next one. Thank y'all so much for watching. Love y'all. Bye.